Video games are home to some of the most iconic, expressive, and lovable characters in all of media. From the wonderfully lively Mario, the sarcastic and judgmental GLaDOS, or the earnest and brave Sora. There are just too many video game characters to name in one video, like Jak and Daxter, Giovanni, Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth from BioShock, Alex from Half-Life, or one of the dogs from Nintendogs. The list goes on, with each character holding a different significance to a different player. Who is your favorite video game character? I know who mine is, and I know already that I'm going to be called basic or cliche for the video game character I love the most, but I can't help choosing a classic. Harry Potter has been my favorite video game character since I was a child. However, as famous as the character is, you'd be surprised to know that technically he's not actually a video game character. It turns out he made his first appearance in a bunch of movies or something. I know it's hard to believe that such a famous character made his debut in such an obscure medium, but it's true. Once I discovered this information, I started thinking, if I really truly wanted to name Harry Potter as my favorite and by extension the greatest video game character of all time, I would need to do something crazy. I would have to revisit the Harry Potter video game franchise that everyone remembers from their youth and play all of them in order to once and for all prove that Harry Potter is the greatest video game character ever made. Hello, and welcome to another Carrot Scraps video. And by another, I mean the 12th. Before we start, I just wanted to explain that this video is going to be an outline for my plans on a future series I'm going to be uploading to this channel. Think of this as a chapter 1 of sorts. Before I continue talking about why I think Harry Potter is a really cool guy, I think there's something else that I need to explain. Let's talk about shovelware. Shovelware games are sometimes defined as games of mediocre to low quality that prioritize a quick release over substance. For some time, shovelware took the form of movie tie-in video games. It seemed at a time that most films released needed to cross-promote by publishing a video game to capitalize off of the success or notoriety of a film. The substance of these games would be the intellectual property that they were capitalizing on, and not the merits of their gameplay. However, many seem to think that some movie tie-in games harbor a hidden quality, or at least that some of these games possess a cult following. Who would have thought that shovelware games like Shrek 2, Home Alone for Game Boy, or Kingdom Hearts weren't just games cluttering my collection, but instead games that people actually enjoyed? It's always very interesting to me to see through the lens of other people. As a video game collector, I enjoy acquiring games. I have no affinity for movie tie-in games specifically, except for Jaws Unleashed and the King Kong video game. They're very special games. Like I alluded to earlier in my video, in my research I discovered that contrary to popular belief, Harry Potter did not start as a video game character. In fact, in my research I discovered that film wasn't even his earliest appearance, like I believed at the start of the video. It turns out that one of the greatest and only video game characters made their debut as the protagonist of a book. Am I reading that right? Book? Yeah, it's good. However, I have always been fascinated by the Harry Potter games. Harry Potter is a series of young adult novels written by J.K. Rowling, famously adapted into multi-million-dollar blockbuster films. The story is a coming-of-age tale about a young boy who finds out that he's a wizard. After doing so, he is dazzled by the world of magic hidden from him for so long. Eventually, his adventures lead him to a quest to defeat those who would abuse magic for evil purposes. While I own all and have read many of the novels, I can't say I'm a fan of the Harry Potter books. However, I've always had a strong affinity for the films, similar to how I love to read comic books, but I'm not a big fan of comic book movies. To get a full understanding for the video games I was about to review, I felt like it was important for me to return to the series' roots. While I enjoyed the first book, other entries in the series, such as Harry Potter and the Owls of Time and Harry Potter and the Impossible Overalls, really left me scratching my head and wondering whether such installments are even necessary. Halfway through Harry Potter and the Time-Traveling Hand Grenade, I decided to stop reading the books altogether because I didn't see any profit in the practice. Perhaps in the future I would focus on the books again, but at that moment, I needed to focus on the video games. The other piece of Harry Potter media that I became fixated on as a child were the video games. The Harry Potter films were released in the prime time of movie tie-in video games. By the time the franchise concluded its films, this business tactic had all but died out. Few, if any, developers were producing movie tie-in games during the release of the final Harry Potter films. To my surprise, there is a Harry Potter video game adaptation of every single film. Part of the reason I'm so passionate and curious about Harry Potter games is because I harbor a lot of nostalgia for the first 3 games in the series. As a child, I would attend an after-school camp and visit the computer lab regularly. These computer lab sessions provided some of my first hands-on exposure to filmmaking in the form of stop motion, and also continued my lessons in the education of computers and the internet. Many of these computer lab sessions would allow free time, and during this time, we could play any of the games provided by the lab. For whatever reason, the PC port of the first Harry Potter game was available on every single computer, and after that, I was hooked. And the 2 things that kept me interested in the rest of the series were the gameplay and the atmosphere. These 2 details made me very curious about the rest of the franchise. It felt like a very different experience than the films. This love of the first game that I discovered in the computer lab led me to ordering the other 2 games through the Scholastic's book club. I'm not sure why we were allowed to buy video games through a service that encouraged reading books, but I'm not complaining. I just wish other Scholastic services offered other video games based off of children's books, like Charlotte's Web Cart, Johnny Johnny Cooking, or Super Bernstein Bears DS. My memory of these games and my fondness of them have made me very curious over the years. Now that being said, I actually don't know how accurate my memories are on this subject, and that's partially the reason why I wanted to start this series. So it got me thinking, maybe I should try playing all the Harry Potter games. Once I realized how crazy that was, I decided to scale my ambition back. What if instead I played a number of the Harry Potter games in story order? For example, playing the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone game, and playing every game in between until I get to the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Doing this would surely be a test of endurance, but it would also provide some important answers to questions I've had for years. First, how many of the Harry Potter games, if any, are good video games that can be admired for their standalone gameplay or experience? Secondly, in spite of the gameplay, could I play the Harry Potter video games and get the same or a similar version of the stories adapted to film? And lastly, our final goal is going to be carefully using empirical evidence to prove once and for all that Harry Potter is the best video game character ever made, and that he could beat Master Chief in a fistfight. Other questions and curiosities include whether the games are actually more faithful to the books than the movies, or identifying games that are somehow considered canon to the books or the movies. Now, because there's such a plethora of high-quality Harry Potter video games, I decided it would be a little unreasonable to haphazardly play them all. Instead, what we're going to be doing is focus our playthrough by spreading these games into runs. For example, we are going to start with a PlayStation-only run. Similar runs that I might do in the future are a handheld-only run, featuring Game Boy Color games, Game Boy Advance games, maybe even a PSP game, a Nintendo run, which would include only GameCube and Wii games, or a PC or an Xbox-only run, which both of those should be self-explanatory. Well, I can definitely see why the majority of people don't even realize that Harry Potter isn't a video game character. His video game franchise is so successful that he spawned so many sequels.
When you drink a Wiggenweld potion, it replenishes all you have. Remarkable, isn't it?
This is going to be really rough, isn't it? I just don't have a good feeling. Not as excited.
Grab a chocolate frog. It'll give you back some energy.
Oh my goodness. It's important to reiterate that there are many Harry Potter games. More specifically, there are many games adapting the same film with a completely different version of the story or gameplay, as well as the same game released on multiple platforms. Not to mention the Harry Potter games that don't adapt a specific movie or book, but instead a concept or provide a different story. However, exploring the differences between similar games that are completely different, like a PlayStation game versus a Game Boy Advance game, is something I'm very interested in doing as well. Because of the amount of Harry Potter games released, it took me some time to acquire all the installments and versions that I could. One night, while looking at my hoard of Harry Potter games, I decided it was time to return to the series' roots and attempt to read the books once more. This was not a task that I took lightly, but I felt like it was important for me to do. Though I was able to successfully finish the book I had previously stopped reading, I almost immediately lost steam 4 chapters into Harry Potter and the Forgotten Sweepstakes. But, as I'm dedicated to journalistic integrity, I pushed through and finished the book. Harry Potter and the Open Mouths was a confusing but refreshing take on the formula already established, but once I started Harry Potter and the After Hours Pool Party, I knew I couldn't continue. I'm willing to accept that maybe I'm the problem. It's possible that the medium of books, novels, and written word isn't for me. For now though, those would be the last Harry Potter books I read. It's time to focus on what people really care about, the video games, and more importantly, proving that Harry Potter is the best video game. I am by no means going to rush this process. I wanted to make this video to outline my plans, express my feelings about the franchise, and kind of have a starting point for my journey. For each game, I will upload a series of videos that will cover a level of the game, or maybe 1 to 2 hours of gameplay. Preferably, I want these uploads to be 20 minutes, but they could potentially be longer, and I'll edit down the gameplay captured for the most notable moments, similar to the way that I release my Doom Eternal Sticky Bomb uploads. If you've seen those videos, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Once I complete the game, I will write a separate video and release it as a review. In that video, I'll talk about whether the game met my 2 standards of having quality gameplay or providing a similar story to the film adaptations. My criteria may change moving forward, but this is an early outline. Gameplay will be judged on music, its fun factor, its fatigue factor, and innovation. Music and atmosphere are very important to establishing a game that you want to play for an extended period of time. Fun factor is just enjoying your time. Fatigue factor will describe how long I want to play these games for. It's entirely possible that the first level of a given game could be fascinating or really fun, but then that same level is just repeated throughout the entire game. That eventually is going to get exhausting, and it's going to affect the review. Lastly, innovation. Innovation defines not just good gameplay, but gameplay that I can't find anywhere else. In my opinion, the innovation of a game's gameplay is what brings you to specific games more frequently. Our story criteria will be judged on atmosphere, character introduction, and the completeness of the story. It's important to note that we are not reviewing the Harry Potter story, we're more so reviewing whether this is a good version of the story. Can the story of these games replace the experience of the film or the book? And if not, why even include the story in the first place, in my opinion? Character introduction is also very important because a lot of these characters are so iconic that it's possible that story writers or developers didn't feel the need to introduce them properly. If we're meant to play these games as a replacement for the story or movie, these iconic characters need good introductions in these games. The first game I will be playing is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for the PlayStation 1. At first, I thought that this game was just a port of the PC game, but after collecting Chamber of Secrets footage for this video, I realized that the PlayStation 2 port is very different than the PC port of the Chamber of Secrets. So it stands to reason that it's possible that this first PlayStation game could be very different as well. The PC game being, again, one of the games in the franchise that I'm the most familiar with. Hopefully, by strictly following my imposed criteria and diligently playing many of the Harry Potter games, I will once and for all prove that Harry Potter is the first, youngest, and most importantly, my favorite video game character. Just you wait, Harry. I'll clear your good name. Doom Guy, Bubsy, Jontron. None of those other video game characters have anything on you. I know that. I've known for years. And soon, I'll prove it to the world that Harry Potter is the greatest anime character ever made. I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on this video. I tried a lot of new things here, and I hope they were somewhat enjoyable. If for some reason you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more. If you want to watch me play video games live, I'm on Twitch at CarrotScraps, and check out my other social media on Instagram and Twitter at CarrotScraps. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you soon. So I'm just realizing that there are Lego Harry Potter games. I don't know how I feel about that idea. Let me put it like this. When I say I want to play every Harry Potter game, I'm not talking about the Lego Harry Potter games. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. It's definitely not going to be a top priority. You know, I'm losing all the excitement that I thought I had to do this, to play all of these games.